The celebration filled every corner of the council hall. Rylan adjusted his ceremonial feathers and watched as representatives from 43 different species mingled beneath floating lights. 100 years since the Treaty of Final Peace. 100 years without a single shot fired in anger across the entire galaxy. He remembered the stories his grandfather told him, stories of burning worlds and dying stars. The War of Seven Fronts had consumed 3 centuries and killed more beings than anyone could count. When the treaty finally came, nobody called it victory. They called it survival. Now the young ones danced between the pillars, their scales and fur and crystal bodies reflecting the celebration lights. They had never known fear. They had never seen a warship except in museums. The galaxy had learned its lesson, paid its price in blood, and chosen a different path. Boris tapped his communicator for the 3rd time that evening. The readings made no sense. He stood in the observation dome of Outpost Velen 7, staring at his screens with growing confusion. The sensor array pointed toward the quarantine zone, that empty region of space marked with warning beacons. Nothing ever came from there. Nothing should come from there. But something was. Energy signatures pulsed across his display, hundreds of them, moving in patterns that suggested coordination, purpose, intelligence. Boris checked the calibration again. The equipment was old, sure. Nobody bothered upgrading monitoring stations anymore. What was the point? The galaxy was at peace. He called his supervisor. Falnes arrived 20 minutes later, antenna twitching with irritation at being pulled away from dinner. "Sensor glitch," Falnes said after a quick glance. "File the report with Survey Department. They'll send a technician in a few months." "But the patterns are meaningless." Falnes placed a hand on his shoulder. "Boris, you're young. You didn't live through the war. Trust me when I say we're all too eager to see threats where none exist. The galaxy is at peace. Let it stay that way." The report went into the system. Request number 7394 in a queue that stretched years into the future. Low priority. No immediate action required. 3 weeks later, the signals intensified. 5 monitoring stations now detected the same anomalies. A junior analyst named Dren noticed something that made his blood run cold. The energy patterns matched old military propulsion systems, the kind used on warships before the treaty banned them all. He brought his findings to the department head. The meeting lasted 4 minutes. "We don't see military threats anymore, Dren. We see peaceful mysteries waiting to be solved." The department head deleted his report. This kind of warmongering speculation could cause panic. The council has worked too hard to build this peace. Dren tried to argue. He received a formal reprimand for his file and a stern lecture about maintaining positive attitudes. The next day, the signals stopped. Every monitoring station showed the same thing. The quarantine zone had gone dark. Whatever had been moving out there, building out there, preparing out there, had simply vanished. Survey Department marked the file as resolved. Another isolated species that probably destroyed itself, they concluded. It happened sometimes. Civilizations that never learned to cooperate rarely survived their own technology. The galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way. At the council celebration, Rylan gave his speech. He talked about the children who would never know war. He talked about the weapons that had been melted down and reformed into monuments. He talked about how the galaxy had finally grown up, had finally learned that there were better ways to resolve differences than violence. The crowd cheered, the lights danced, the music played. Nobody noticed the young analyst in the back who couldn't stop checking his data pad. Nobody saw the worry in his eyes as he reviewed the last readings from the quarantine zone before everything went silent. Far beyond the monitoring stations, far beyond the mapped regions of space, something moved through the darkness. Vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever built slid between the stars. No running lights, no identification signals, no wasted energy. They moved with the precision of a military formation. Thousands of them, arranged in patterns that spoke of doctrine and training and preparation. Their hulls bore no markings, no symbols, no decorations. Just smooth metal surfaces designed for function, not beauty. Inside the lead vessel, Commander Walsh studied the galactic map. So many worlds, so many species, all of them celebrating their peace, secure in their belief that war was a thing of the past. He thought about Earth, about the decision made 200 years ago when humanity first detected the signals of galactic warfare, about the choice to prepare rather than hope, to build rather than pray, to become strong rather than trust in the kindness of strangers. The galaxy had spent a century congratulating itself on ending war. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for the day when war came looking for them anyway. Walsh closed the map and returned to the tactical display. The fleet maintained perfect silence as it advanced. No need to announce themselves yet. No need to disturb the galaxy's peaceful dreams. Not until they were ready. Behind him, 50,000 warships followed in formation. The United Earth Space Service, unknown to the galaxy, unsuspected by the Council, moving through the void like shadows. The galaxy had declared the war over. Humanity was about to introduce themselves. Yalnis had been hauling agricultural supplies for 30 years. In all that time, nothing interesting ever happened on the outer rim routes. He preferred it that way. Boring meant safe. Boring meant his crew went home to their families. Today, boring ended. The sensor alert pulled him from his logistics reports. His second officer, a young Tellarian named Pavix, stared at the display with all 4 eyes wide. Unknown vessel captain, matching our speed. Yalni studied the readings. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of Merchant's Hope. Its design made no sense. Angular where galactic vessels curved, dense where they favored light construction. It showed no registry, no identification beacon, no energy signature he recognized. Hail them, standard peace greeting, all 47 languages. They waited. Silence stretched across the void. The unknown ship maintained perfect distance, neither approaching nor retreating. Yalnis felt sweat forming beneath his scales. Then the response came. Perfect galactic common, no accent, no hesitation. This is UESS Vanguard, United Earth Space Service. We request permission to come alongside for diplomatic exchange. Pavix checked the registry database. Captain, there's no United Earth Space Service in the galactic record, no Earth at all. Yalnis considered his options. First Contact Protocol 7 was clear. Unknown species received welcome, assistance, and guidance to the nearest Council world. He'd never actually had to use it before, but the rules were simple enough. Permission granted, Vanguard. We'll prepare a docking port. The human shuttle attached itself to Merchant's Hope despite having completely different airlock designs. Yalnis watched through the cargo bay camera as 3 figures emerged. They wore pressure suits, but their body shape was similar to several species he knew. Bipedal, 2 arms, 1 head. Humanoid, the scientists called it, common enough in the galaxy. What struck him was how they moved, precise, coordinated, like soldiers, not diplomats. Commander Walsh introduced himself and his team. Science Officer Reed and Diplomat Hayes followed him into the conference room Yalnis had hastily prepared. They carried data archives, which they presented with formal courtesy. We represent 8 billion souls across 12 colonies, Hayes explained. Her voice carried warmth, but her eyes never stopped scanning the room. We've been isolated due to spatial anomalies around our home system. Now those anomalies have cleared, and we wish to join the galactic community. Yalnis reviewed their data while his crew provided refreshments. The human archives contained everything: history, culture, technology, current status. They claimed to come from Sol system, the old quarantine zone. They said they'd been developing in isolation for 400 years. The engineer, Pavlik, pulled Yalnis aside after an hour of review. Something's wrong with their timeline. They claim to have developed faster-than-light travel in 80 years. Captain, it took the Talarians 300 years. The Korath took 400. Nobody does it in 80. Yalnis looked at the humans through the viewport. They sat patiently, answering questions, sharing information. Reed discussed their culture with genuine enthusiasm. Walsh remained alert but friendly. Hayes smiled and made jokes that actually landed. They seemed nice, normal, peaceful. "What else bothers you?" Yalnis asked. "Their energy output numbers. If these readings are accurate, their industrial capacity exceeds the Korath Confederation, and the Confederation has 600 colonized worlds. These humans claim only 12. When Yalnis raised the question, Hayes answered smoothly. "We had unique circumstances that required rapid advancement. Isolation can be a powerful motivator, Captain." Walsh added, "We learned to make efficient use of our resources." The conversation moved on. The humans requested permission to establish an embassy on a Council core world. They wanted to apply for membership. All very proper, very procedural, very peaceful. Yalnis agreed to transport them to Talmer Station, the nearest Council facility. The humans politely declined his offer of quarters aboard Merchant's Hope. "We appreciate the hospitality, but Vanguard will accompany you," Walsh said. "No disrespect intended. We simply prefer to maintain our own logistics." For the next 3 days, Vanguard followed them, always exactly 1,000 kilometers away. Never closer, never farther. Perfect formation, no deviation. Pavlik couldn't stop analyzing their ship. "They're barely using any power, Captain. Their drives should be burning 10 times the energy for that mass. Either their efficiency is impossible, or they're running on technology we don't understand." Talmer Station appeared ahead, a gleaming hub where 20 trade routes intersected. Administrator Queln met them at the main dock. He greeted the humans with practiced diplomatic warmth and began the standard integration process. Everything went smoothly until the fleet registry discussion. "You maintain 500 defensive vessels?" Queln asked, reviewing their application. "For colony protection, yes," Hayes confirmed. Queln set down his data pad. "I'm afraid that violates the Treaty of Final Peace, Article 12. All species disbanded their military forces a century ago. The galaxy maintains peace through the Peace Enforcement Bureau, which operates unarmed inspection vessels only." Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "We understand the treaty, Administrator. However, humanity is not a signatory to that agreement. All species must agree to the treaty to join the Council." "We weren't invited to your war, Administrator." Hayes's voice remained pleasant, but something hard entered her eyes. "We're not bound by your peace." Queln felt the temperature in the room drop. Walsh and Reed sat motionless, watching their diplomat handle the situation. "The Council will need to review this," Queln managed. "Of course we're patient," Hayes smiled. "We've waited 200 years, we can wait a few more days." After the humans left, Queln contacted the Council security chief. "Run a full background investigation on these humans. Something feels wrong." He stared at the fleet registry. 500 ships seemed like a lot for a species requesting membership. The Korath Confederation, which had been a galactic power for millennia, had maintained 2,000 ships before the treaty. These newcomers, these isolated humans from a quarantined system, claimed to have 500 defensive vessels after only 4 centuries of spaceflight. Queln pulled up the old quarantine reports. The zone had been sealed off due to anomalous weapons testing signatures, massive energy discharges that suggested planet-killing weapons being developed. That had been 150 years ago, when the galaxy was too consumed by its own war to investigate. What had humanity been doing in that quarantine zone for 150 years, while the galaxy tore itself apart and then disarmed? Queln had a terrible feeling he was about to find out. Counselor Threx watched the human delegation through the observation window. They sat in the waiting area, calm and patient. Hayes read something on a data pad. Reed sketched in a notebook. Walsh simply watched the other species pass by, his eyes tracking movement with unsettling precision. Security Chief Nadris entered without knocking. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You need to see this." She transferred files to his display. "Old quarantine records from Sol system. I dug through archives nobody's touched in a century." Threx read quickly. His hands began to shake. The quarantine had been established because military sensors detected weapons testing. Not conventional weapons, planet killers, star breakers, things that made the War of Seven Fronts look civilized by comparison. The galaxy was too busy destroying itself to investigate, Nadris continued. "We put up warning beacons and forgot about them, assumed any species that aggressive would wipe itself out. But they didn't. No, they spent 150 years developing weapons while we disarmed. Threx, what if humanity is what we get when a species has unlimited time to prepare for war without anyone stopping them?" The council session began an hour later. Hayes presented their case for membership with professional efficiency. She discussed trade opportunities, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, everything the council wanted to hear. Then Counselor Vren raised the military question. "The Treaty of Final Peace requires complete disarmament. You must decommission your defensive fleet to qualify for membership." Hayes nodded politely. "We understand the requirement. We request a 48-hour recess to consult with our government." The recess was granted, but Threx couldn't wait. He requested a private meeting with Hayes in a secured conference room. She arrived alone. "We know what you are," Threx said without preamble. "We know why you were quarantined. Weapons development, planet killers. You've spent 2 centuries building an arsenal while the galaxy disarmed." Hayes regarded him calmly. "Then you know we had good reason to prepare. You ask us to trust you with weapons that could destroy us all." "No," Hayes leaned forward. "I'm asking you to understand that we developed those weapons because we watched you destroy each other. We saw what happens when civilizations trust in peace without the strength to maintain it." She activated a holographic display. Images of galactic warfare filled the space between them, worlds burning, stations shattered, billions dead. "We detected your war 200 years ago. We watched through telescopes as you tore yourselves apart. Earth's government made a decision that day. Never again. Not to us. So you built weapons. We built survival. Every ship, every weapon, every fortification exists because we learned the lesson you paid for in blood. Peace doesn't maintain itself." Threx wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. She was right. The Treaty of Final Peace hadn't come from enlightenment. It came from exhaustion, from mutual destruction so complete that continuing the war meant extinction. "How many ships do you really have?" Hayes opened a new file. The numbers made Threx's vision blur. 50,000 active warships, 200,000 in reserve, orbital foundries capable of producing 1,000 new vessels per month, weapons technology developed in complete isolation, untested against galactic standards but theoretically superior in every category. "You could conquer the galaxy." "We could, we won't." Hayes closed the display. "We don't want conquest, Counselor. We want to live without fear. You achieved peace through exhaustion. You pray war never returns because you can't fight it anymore. We achieved readiness through preparation. We hope war never comes because we can. What do you want from us?" "Membership, trade, friendship. But we will not disarm, not for you, not for anyone." Threx stood and walked to the window. Outside, peaceful species went about their lives. None of them knew how fragile their peace really was. The Council will never accept an armed member species. Then the Council makes a mistake. Hayes joined him at the window. Because the galaxy declared the war over, we're here to make sure it stays that way. The truth leaked within hours. Threx never learned how. Suddenly, every counselor knew that humanity possessed military force exceeding the galaxy's combined pre-treaty fleets. The emergency session descended into chaos. Some demanded immediate rejection. Others argued for containment. A few suggested surrender. Young Counselor Bryn stood and shouted over the noise. "We're arguing about whether to reject them or fight them. Has anyone considered that we need them?" The chamber fell silent. "The treaty didn't end war," Bryn continued. "It just ended our ability to fight one. We built peace on the assumption that nobody would ever challenge it. These humans are showing us how dangerous that assumption is." "So we submit to their dominance?" Threx asked. "No, we recognize reality. They have strength we lack. We have infrastructure they need. We negotiate." But negotiations proved impossible. Every compromise was rejected. Hayes made humanity's position clear: full membership with full military capacity or no deal. Public reaction across the galaxy ranged from panic to outrage. Some species began secret rearmament programs, terrified of human power. Others called for acceptance, arguing that humanity inside the Council was safer than humanity outside it. The Peace Enforcement Bureau uncovered a weapons facility on a Korath world, partially assembled warships, salvaged pre-treaty weapons. When confronted, Counselor Rylan admitted the truth. "We have no choice. If humans won't disarm, we must rearm." Within a week, 3 more secret programs were discovered. The Treaty of Final Peace, maintained for a century, was collapsing. Fear of humanity had reignited old paranoia and rivalry. Threx realized the terrible truth. The humans hadn't destabilized the galaxy. They had simply exposed how unstable it already was. Peace built on wishful thinking rather than strength. Security based on hope rather than capability. Hayes requested an emergency session. She presented a proposal that shocked everyone. "Let humanity serve as your military. You remain demilitarized. We provide the security umbrella. In exchange, we gain full Council membership and economic integration. Our forces answer to a joint Human Council command structure." Threx stood. "You ask us to make you our masters." Hayes met his eyes. "No, we ask you to make us your guardians. There's a difference. You want to ensure we don't abuse our power. Give yourselves oversight." The debate raged for hours. Bryn argued for acceptance. Nadris worried about precedent. Rylan asked the key question: "What happens when we disagree with you?" "Then you outvote us," Hayes said simply. "We're asking for membership, not dictatorship." Before anyone could vote, alarms sounded throughout the station. Unknown contacts detected at the galactic rim. Thousands of vessels, not human, coming fast. The sensor network had never been designed to detect military threats. Why would it be? The galaxy had been at peace for 100 years. The monitoring stations tracked commercial traffic, mapped stellar phenomena, and occasionally logged scientific curiosities. Which is why it took 6 hours for anyone to realize the galaxy was being invaded. Technician Loris noticed the anomaly during his routine scan. Ships entering from the void between galaxies. Hundreds at first, then thousands. All military configuration. All heading toward populated space. He called his supervisor, who called the station commander, who called the Peace Enforcement Bureau, who had absolutely no idea what to do. The Bureau's emergency response consisted of 3 unarmed inspection vessels and a protocol manual written by committee. The manual's first chapter was titled De-escalation through communication. The second chapter covered conflict resolution via mediation. There was no chapter on invasion. By the time the Council convened emergency session, 17 Outer Rim colonies were already evacuating. Billions of civilians crammed onto transport ships designed for thousands. Parents held children too young to understand why everyone was screaming. The elderly waited in orderly lines that wouldn't save them. Counselor Threx stared at the tactical display in horror. 5,000 unknown vessels in perfect military formation. Their technology was completely unfamiliar. Their intentions were clear. "Can we negotiate?" someone asked. "With what?" Nadris replied. "We have nothing to threaten them with, nothing to offer them. We disbanded our military. We melted down our weapons. We built a civilization that depends on everyone agreeing to be peaceful." Bryn pulled up evacuation projections. "At current transport capacity, we can save maybe 10% of the Outer Rim population before they arrive." Silence filled the chamber. This was the cost of a century of peace. They had forgotten how to fight. Worse, they had forgotten how to think about fighting. Threx contacted Hayes. The human sat in her assigned quarters, already dressed in what looked like a military uniform. "Can your people help?" Hayes was already moving before he finished asking. "Our nearest battle group is 40 hours away. You need to evacuate now. Every civilian you can move them." 40 hours might be too late. "I know, but it's what we have." The invasion fleet reached Telvin Prime first. 3 billion inhabitants, agricultural world, no defenses, no weapons, not even security forces trained for anything more than crowd control. Ryland's secret fleet intercepted them. 50 Korath ships, hastily armed with salvaged weapons and volunteer crews. They broadcast peace greetings in every known language. The unknown vessels didn't respond. When the Korath opened fire, the battle lasted 14 minutes. The unknown ships had shields that absorbed energy weapons, armor that shrugged off kinetic rounds, weapons that cut through Korath hulls like they were paper. All 50 ships destroyed. 2,000 Korath dead. Their sacrifice bought the civilians on Telvin Prime exactly 0 extra time to evacuate. The bombardment began at dawn. The unknown fleet positioned itself in orbit and methodically destroyed every city, every town, every settlement they could target. 3 billion people had nowhere to run. Then the message came. The voice was mechanical, translated through processors. It called the fleet the Dominion Assembly. It claimed the galaxy had been seeded by their ancestors 50,000 years ago. "You are children playing with our inheritance. We have returned to reclaim it." The Dominion gave the galaxy 72 hours to surrender completely. Every government, every species, every world. Total submission to their authority. "Refuse, and we will cleanse this galaxy of unauthorized settlements." The transmission ended. Telvin Prime burned behind them, 3 billion dead in 6 hours. The council chambers emptied. Some counselors fled to their home worlds. Others transmitted immediate surrender offers to the Dominion. A few called for resistance, though nobody knew how to resist with no weapons and no training. Threx remained at his post because he didn't know what else to do. He watched his civilization collapse in real time. 100 years of peace shattered in a single day. Hayes walked into the chamber, alone, calm. "We've encountered the Dominion before." Every remaining counselor turned to stare at her. Hayes explained. 80 years ago, the Dominion sent scouts to Sol's system. They made the same claims of ancestral ownership, demanded humanity surrender or die. We fought them for 3 years, lost 2 colonies, 800 million dead, but we learned their tactics, reverse-engineered their technology, destroyed their scout fleet. How? Bryn asked. "We adapted, we always adapt, it's what humans do." Hayes placed both hands on the conference table. "I'm going to be very clear about this. You have one choice to make, and you have to make it now." She activated the tactical display, showed the Dominion fleet advancing, showed the defenseless colonies in their path, showed the timeline to annihilation. Vote now. Full human membership, full military authority to coordinate defense, or we take our ships and defend only our own worlds. Threx stood. You would abandon billions to die. Hayes looked at him without emotion. You spent a century telling us that military force is barbaric. You built a civilization that considers weapons immoral. Now you need someone to kill for you, and you're offended that we're asking for payment. So we submit or we die. No, you accept reality or you die. Reality is this: you can't defend yourselves, we can. Either we're partners or we're not, choose. The vote took 3 minutes. Unanimous. Humanity granted full council membership and full military command authority. Hayes nodded once. Then consider this galaxy under Earth's protection. Someone get me a direct line to Admiral Burke. The call connected. Burke's face appeared on screen, already wearing battle armor. Council has agreed to terms, Admiral. You are authorized to engage. Understood. Fleet is 36 hours out. Tell them to stay out of our way. Jump signatures began appearing across galactic space. Not hundreds of ships, thousands. 15,000 human warships emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect coordination. The United Earth Space Service had arrived in force. Threx watched them deploy. Watched formations that spoke of centuries of tactical development. Watched technology that made the Dominion fleet look primitive by comparison. He realized humanity hadn't just prepared for war during their isolation. They had perfected it. Burke's final transmission broadcast on all channels. This is Admiral Burke, United Earth Space Service. The galaxy declared the war over. You weren't invited to disagree. All ships, weapons free. Show them why humanity doesn't surrender. The human fleet accelerated toward the Dominion. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Burke studied the tactical display from the command deck of UESS Defiant. 5,000 Dominion warships surrounded Telvin Prime like predators circling wounded prey. 3 billion civilians already dead. The survivors huddled in underground shelters, hoping for a miracle they had no reason to expect. Burke intended to deliver that miracle. His fleet emerged from jump space in attack formation. 3,000 ships in the first wave, with another 12,000 positioned in reserve. Each vessel crewed by humans who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The Dominion commander broadcast immediately. You cannot prevail. We are Legion. We have conquered 1,000 galaxies. Your resistance is futile. Burke smiled. He had heard similar speeches before, 80 years ago when the Dominion scouts arrived at Earth. Back then, humanity had 500 ships and desperation. Now they had 50,000 ships and experience. This is Admiral Burke. We are humanity. We've heard that before. He gave the order. 15,000 missiles launched simultaneously, crossing the distance in seconds. The Dominion shields lit up, absorbing the impacts exactly as expected. Burke wasn't trying to damage them. He was testing their response time. 2.3 seconds to full shield activation. Adequate, but not exceptional. The second wave launched before the first impacts faded. Not missiles this time. Kinetic kill vehicles. Solid tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds. No energy signature to block. No warhead to intercept. Just mass and velocity. 200 Dominion ships died in the opening exchange. Their shields handled energy weapons perfectly. They had no answer for kinetic bombardment. The Dominion fleet closed to energy weapon range, confident in their firepower advantage. Their vessels were larger, their weapons more powerful. In a direct slugging match, they should have won. Burke had no intention of fighting fair. All ships scatter formation. Wolf pack protocols make them chase you. The human fleet exploded into hundreds of smaller groups. 3 and 4 ship elements that darted through the asteroid field surrounding Telvin Prime. The Dominion tried to maintain formation, tried to concentrate their fire. They were designed for fleet engagements against opponents who fought the same way. Humans fought differently. Commander Walsh led a frigate squadron through the debris field. His 3 ships moved like dancers, weaving between asteroids, using the rocks for cover. Dominion vessels followed, powerful but ponderous. Walsh waited until they committed to the pursuit. Then he detonated the charges his team had secretly placed on the asteroids 2 hours earlier. 50 Dominion ships died in the explosions and debris. The survivors scattered, formation broken, command structure disrupted. All carriers launch fighters, Burke ordered. The human carriers opened their bays. Thousands of small attack craft poured out, each one carrying a single pilot and enough firepower to cripple a Dominion cruiser. The fighters swarmed like insects, too small and too fast for the Dominion's main weapons to track. The Dominion had designed their ships to fight other large vessels. They had never considered that humans would bring knife fighters to a gun fight. Within 3 hours, the Dominion lost 800 ships, human casualties, 70 vessels. The mathematics were brutal and unsustainable for the invaders. The Dominion commander requested parley. Burke refused. "You gave us 72 hours before you started killing civilians. We're giving you none." The battle raged for 2 more days. Human reinforcements kept arriving. 5,000 ships, then 10,000. The Dominion found themselves outnumbered for the first time in their conquest. Burke deployed the weapon humanity had spent 80 years perfecting: null field generators. Technology reverse-engineered from the original Dominion scout ships. Devices that collapsed enemy shields regardless of power output. With their shields gone, Dominion vessels became targets. Human rail guns punched through armor. Human missiles found their marks. Human fighters exploited every weakness. The Dominion broke. Their fleet scattered, abandoning formation, abandoning tactics, abandoning their dead. They ran for the galactic rim and the dark space beyond. Burke ordered pursuit. Human ships chased them across 3 star systems, picked them off one by one, showed no mercy because mercy was a luxury defenders couldn't afford. At the rally point in deep space, the surviving Dominion fleet found human 3rd Battle Group waiting. The ambush cost them another 1,000 ships. Only 800 Dominion vessels escaped back to the intergalactic void, out of 5,000. Burke recalled his fleet to Telvin Prime. Medical ships deployed immediately. Engineering teams began rescue operations. The planet was devastated, but 1 billion survivors remained in the deep shelters. Human crews worked alongside Council species for the first time, hauling debris, treating wounded, rebuilding infrastructure. The galaxy watched and learned what it meant when humanity went to war. They didn't just destroy enemies, they saved civilians. The Council reconvened with Hayes now sitting as an official representative. The casualty reports came in. 15 worlds attacked, 2 billion dead in the colonies that received no protection. Telvin Prime saved, 1 billion survivors because humans arrived in time. Threx addressed the chamber. "We failed. We built peace on hope instead of strength. The first real test destroyed us." Bryn added, "We need to change, all of us." Hayes presented the military reorganization plan. Every species contributing personnel and resources. Humans providing training and command structure. Joint Defense Force answerable to both human commanders and Council oversight. "This is the price of survival," Hayes explained. "No more pretending war doesn't exist. No more trusting in good intentions. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the preparation to prevent it." The vote passed unanimously. The Treaty of Final Peace was amended. Collective defense became mandatory. But not everyone accepted the new reality. Pacifist worlds objected. Some species feared human dominance would become permanent. Counselor Varish led a small coalition demanding alternatives. We chose peace for a reason. You're asking us to become warriors. Hayes listened patiently. Then stay peaceful. Others will defend you, because that's what civilizations do. The strong protect the weak. Human intelligence analyzed captured Dominion technology. The findings were classified and presented to senior council members only. The invasion fleet had been an advance force, a test of galactic defenses. The main Dominion armada remained in intergalactic space. Conservative estimates suggested 100,000 ships, maybe more. They would return. The only question was when. The galaxy began to prepare. Human advisors deployed to every major world, shipyards activated, resources redirected. Young beings from 40 species volunteered for military service. 1 year after first contact, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Weapons production, strategic planning, tactical training, everything the treaty had forbidden, now embraced as necessary. Hayes stood with Threx at a memorial for the Koreth pilots who died defending Telvin Prime. We were wrong, Threx admitted, about everything, about peace, about strength, about you. You weren't wrong to want peace, just wrong about how to keep it. Deep space sensors detected new contacts at the galactic rim. The main Dominion armada, exactly as predicted, 100,000 ships advancing in perfect formation. This time the galaxy didn't panic. The Council Defense Force stood ready, 100,000 ships from 40 species, human-trained, human-led, ready to fight. Admiral Burke assumed overall command. All forces battle stations. They want their inheritance back. Let's show them why this galaxy belongs to us now. The Dominion armada stretched across the void like a metal storm. 100,000 vessels, each one built for conquest. They had destroyed galaxies, enslaved species, claimed entire sectors of space as their divine right. They expected this galaxy to surrender, to beg, to die. They were about to learn something new. Commander Reed watched the approach from her position aboard the human science vessel Discovery. Around her, analysts from 12 different species worked in coordinated silence. A year ago, most of them had never seen a weapon. Now they tracked enemy formations with professional precision. Dominion is maintaining rigid battle formation, a Tellarian analyst reported. Standard conquest doctrine. They think we'll meet them head-on. Reed smiled. Then let's teach them about human tactics. Admiral Burke's plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Dominion expected the galaxy to defend its core worlds, to position fleets around populated systems and wait for the attack. Instead, Burke had positioned his forces in empty space, 3 light years from the nearest colony. Nothing to defend, nothing to protect, just empty void and human ingenuity. The Dominion detected the fleet and adjusted course. Exactly as predicted. They saw 100,000 ships and assumed numerical parity. They saw mixed species crews and assumed weakness. They saw humanity's allies and assumed they were the real threat. All 3 assumptions were wrong. Contact in 10 minutes, Burke announced. Remember your training, trust your teammates, make humanity proud. Across the fleet, human commanders stood beside Council species officers. Bryn commanded a destroyer group, trained by Walsh himself. Rylan led Korath squadrons that had learned to fight like humans. Even Threx had taken a position on the fleet coordination team. The galaxy had learned quickly. Fear was an excellent teacher. The Dominion fired first. Energy beams that could cut through planets, missiles that could crack moons, weapons refined through 1,000 conquests. The combined fleet scattered before the barrage arrived. Burke had taught them the first rule of human warfare: never be where the enemy expects you. All ships execute pattern Delta 7. The fleet split into 1,000 smaller elements. not the rigid formations the Dominion knew, not the predictable tactics they had crushed a million times before. This was controlled chaos, calculated disorder, human doctrine applied on a galactic scale. The Dominion tried to adapt, tried to reform their lines, tried to concentrate fire, but they were fighting an enemy that didn't follow the rules they understood. Reed's science teams deployed the first surprise, gravity wells hidden in the void, artificial singularities that disrupted Dominion formation. The enemy ships found themselves pulled off course, scattered, vulnerable. Walsh led fighter wings through the gaps, thousands of small craft that swarmed the Dominion cruisers. The invaders swatted at them like insects, wasting ammunition on targets too small to matter individually. But humanity had learned long ago that 1,000 small cuts killed, just as surely as one large wound. "Second wave advance," Burke ordered. The Council species ships moved forward, not to engage in direct combat. That would be suicide. Instead, they deployed electronic warfare systems, jamming fields, false sensor readings, communication disruption. The Dominion fleet found itself blind and deaf. Their coordination collapsed. Ships fired on their own allies. Formations drifted into collision courses. A military machine built on rigid doctrine ground itself apart when the doctrine stopped working. Then Burke deployed humanity's real weapon. Null field generators activated across the entire combat zone. Thousands of them, positioned during weeks of preparation. The Dominion shields collapsed simultaneously. 100,000 ships suddenly vulnerable. All batteries fire at will. The galaxy's vengeance came in light and fury. Energy weapons humanity had taught them to build. Kinetic rounds Council species had learned to aim. Missiles that young beings from 40 worlds had trained to deploy. The Dominion died in fire and mathematics. They had expected primitives. They found prepared soldiers. They had expected victims. They found warriors. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Dominion armada was destroyed, not routed, not defeated, annihilated. Fewer than 1,000 ships escaped. They jumped to faster than light and fled back to the intergalactic void. Burke let them go. Let them carry the message back to wherever they came from. The galaxy doesn't surrender anymore. The combined fleet regrouped. Damage reports came in. Human losses, 3,000 ships. Council species losses, 4,000 ships. Terrible numbers, grievous casualties. But they had won. Reed found Walsh in the medical bay. He was treating a Core-Eth pilot who had lost an arm in the fighting. The pilot was crying, not from pain but from relief. "We did it, we actually did it." Walsh bandaged the wound with gentle hands. "You did it, you fought like hell, your ancestors would be proud." Across the fleet, humans worked alongside Council species, repairing damage, treating wounded, recovering the dead. The barriers between species had dissolved in fire. They weren't separate civilizations anymore. They were one fleet, one military, one people who had bled together. The Council met on Talmer Station 1 month after the battle. A memorial wall listed the dead from every species. 7,000 names. 7,000 beings who gave their lives to protect a galaxy that had forgotten how to protect itself. Hayes stood before the assembly. "The Dominion will return. Maybe not this year, maybe not this century, but they'll return. And when they do, we'll be ready." Bryn nodded. "Because we learned the lesson. Peace without strength is just waiting to be conquered." Threx added, "We built this peace together. We'll maintain it together." The vote was unanimous. Permanent military integration. Combined fleet command. Mutual defense treaty that would last as long as the galaxy existed. Some species still objected, still argued for pacifism, still believed war was inherently wrong. Hayes respected their position, protected their right to hold it. "Stay peaceful," she told them. "Raise your children in safety. Build your art and culture. That's what we're fighting for, the right to choose peace instead of having it forced on you. Reed joined her at the observation window. Outside, human ships and council vessels moved in formation, training exercises, constant preparation. The galaxy would never be caught unprepared again. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Reed asked. "Coming here, revealing ourselves, changing everything." Hayes considered the question. "We gave them a choice, adapt or die. They chose to adapt. Some of them hate us for it. Some of them, but more are alive because of it." Deep space monitoring stations reported no new threats. The Dominion had retreated beyond sensor range. The galaxy was safe, for now. Burke retired from active command but stayed on as strategic advisor. Walsh opened a training academy. Reed led joint research projects. Hayes remained on the council, representing humanity's voice. The galaxy declared the war over 100 years ago. Humanity arrived and showed them war was never truly over. It just waited for people to forget it existed. Now they remembered, now they prepared, now they stood together. The peace would hold, not because everyone agreed to be peaceful, but because everyone agreed to defend each other. That was the difference. That was what humanity taught them. Strength to protect the weak, unity to resist the strong, preparation to prevent the next war. The galaxy declared the war over. Humanity made sure it stayed that way.